Oh boy, can you hear me? Is everybody awake? It's not easy being the last speaker, especially around 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when you need to have a drink, like I do. I don't have a fancy PowerPoint, sorry about that. But a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank everybody for presenting. It was awesome. I learned a lot today. Education probably isn't my strong suit. I'm more of a corporate and sports guy. I barely passed my university degree, so that was a challenge. But learning what I've learned today and what I can take home has really been special. So I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to take part in today's symposium and learn about the initiatives from across Canada that are building early childhood education and public education.
Sir, please use a mic because
They can't hear? Oh dear. This one here? Can you put down this one?
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. Sorry about that. So your knowledge and your passion today to expand early learning opportunities for all children fuel today's discussions, and this is a priority for our family foundation. So many of you might ask the question, why am I here and why is my mother not here, who's been the sort of champion of early childhood education for our family foundation for many years. She couldn't be here today, and the short story behind that is about a month ago, 2 weeks before the board meeting, Jane, I got a call from my mother, and she said, I have some news for you. I'm on the board of directors for her foundation. She said, I'm not going to be chair of the foundation anymore. So I said, oh, shit, Mom. You can't give it up. You know, I know you're approaching 90, but you know, you've got a sound mind and your mobility isn't where you'd like it, but you can still make a very meaningful contribution. So forget that nonsense, just stay on. No. She's very stubborn. She said, no, I'm out and you're in. I'm in. What do you mean I'm in? You're the new chair. Oh. So I listened to that for a bit and I said, well, I guess you could say I've learned over the years that you don't argue with my mother, especially at 90 years old. So here I am. So again, I'll do the best I can. One of the things I learned today, which I found actually profound, was, first of all, for me personally, I spend most of my time in the corporate world, some in the sports world. So I have a pretty good understanding. I chair the board of our family business, McCain Foods. You might have heard of it somewhere along the way. It's a pretty big international company. We have about, I think, 23,000 people now working around the world in about 60 countries. 160 countries, and we have 65 facilities. So we're a fairly international company. So I've been learning a lot about, as chair of the board, different things that we can do to move the company forward. And as I listened to all of the speeches today, every single one of them, I could point to something in business that relates to early childhood education. And so I'll just give you a couple of the ones that really resonate with me. You talked about economies of scale and the importance of the infrastructure and having asset utilization. That's a topic most businesses talk about. So how can you leverage your assets? You talked about the importance of talent development and educating your workforce. Companies that don't spend time focusing on their people and their organization will fail. So they have to continuously work with helping in professional development, so you could easily apply that thinking into your early childhood educators. Best practices around the world. I hear OECD countries, some of them are Europe, they're doing a much better job than we're doing here in Canada. And I think that's something that we can learn from. So again, something to learn today. Building a culture of high engagement, both IQ and EQ. I love this one because, we heard the panel talking about it today. especially when it comes around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you know that every single company I know, every single one, private or public, is talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion? They're talking about it. And they're trying to make a difference. It's not as if they're not on their agenda, but let me tell you, it's tough. And why is it tough? It's because when you're trying to change cultures, change how people think, when they're in workforce, they come into the workforce, what, 19, 20? Maybe earlier, but usually, by that time, it's tough to change it. It's tough to change it. The way to change it is to start focusing on these early years. That's how you change diversity, equity, inclusion, in those early years. Talk about language skills, same thing. But you have to change culture. The earlier you can do it, the easier it is for people like me that are trying to change culture at 19 to 65. It is tough. And a lot of companies walk the talk, but it's hard to do. It's not easy. Literacy, we talk about literacy. I know our family foundation at McCain has invested in literacy. Literacy in Nova Scotia, as Premier McNeil would know, and New Brunswick, they're not as smart in Nova Scotia as we are in New Brunswick, by the way. Literacy is a big issue. It's a huge issue. And we've tried to make a difference in New Brunswick, in our small province, in a small way. But it doesn't have the impact that you do when you're starting to talk about literacy in 3 to 6. It's not even close. So just another example of where business people, provinces can really benefit from this literacy piece. We talked about people, and I can tell you right now, any speech I give on business, it's all about people. It's all about people. It's all about people. So the people you're employing in the early childhood space, that's where it's at. That's what's important. And finally, I'm going to make a comment about why you're here today, or not why you're here, but some of the things you might want to consider for the future. I personally think the talks today were profound. I loved them. But I really believe that if you want to move the needle in this space, you're going to have to engage the corporate community at a lot higher level. That might sound a little funny, but trust me, all of these things that I just talked to you about in terms of corporations and how they want to run their business can really catch the ear of corporate leaders. If you catch the ear of corporate leaders, they will help the politicians and how important it is. So it's just my own personal thought, but I think it's something where in future you might want to try to engage more people to get them excited that are in senior business leaders that can make a difference. I think it's important. Finally, today I want to announce a new initiative that our foundation is embarking upon to build broad support for school-based early childhood education for 4-year-old children in Atlantic Canada. Our initiative begins with gathering together corporate and community leaders who will lend their voices and influence to promote this goal. The former Premier of Nova Scotia, Stephen McNeil, has agreed to chair this initiative. And actually, I'm quite excited about it. When I was asked to take on the new chair role, I obviously was able to have more say as to where we would put our time and effort. And we quickly, Jane and I, put together a committee to work from the foundation, on the foundation. And my personal goal, I'm Atlantic Canadian first, I want to make a difference in our region. We have 4 provinces. Nova Scotia has done some great work in this space. It should be recognized, particularly with the investment that my mother's made in early childhood in Mount St. Vincent. I think we can make a difference in Atlantic Canada, and I think we can show the rest of Canada how it's done. So that might sound like a bold goal, but I've seconded our former Premier, Stephen. I'm going to get him to come up and say a few words, just to sort of add a little color. But Stephen championed things in Nova Scotia in this space, and he and I are going to try, between his knowledge and working with the government officials and my knowledge of working in the corporate sector, I think we can make an impact, certainly on ECE in Atlantic Canada. So that's our mission, and thank you for listening to me.
First of all, I want to echo Scott's words about today. I almost decided I was going to make a comeback. It really has been inspiring from everything that we've learned. Gail, I don't know where you went in the room. I just want to acknowledge you before I get into the education component. I couldn't help but agree with you every time you began to speak. I think I was born to the most extraordinary woman in the world. I think the gift that I was given, I'm the 12th of 17 kids to the same parents, and I think I was given the great gift of being born to the most extraordinary woman in the world and father. But I have to acknowledge that my ancestors were part of building systemic racism in our province and really across our country. And until we, all of you now, not me anymore, but all of you in positions of leadership acknowledge that and verbalize it, we then don't give ourselves the platform to begin to move forward. And until we acknowledge what has happened as this country has been founded and been built, which by the way is an extraordinary country and probably the most extraordinary country in the world, until we acknowledge the systemic racism within our systems, we'll never be able to achieve our ultimate best as a nation and as community in a province. So Gail, I just want to put my voice to yours and thank you for the work that you're doing in Nova Scotia. And I'm looking forward to seeing Don Bureau to find out why he changed the name of that. Don is the president of Nova Scotia Community College. As well though, here today in early learning, I want to just acknowledge the tremendous work that I'm hearing all across the country. And you know, part of the issue inside of when you're leading governments, there's so many things happening inside of a respective government or community or organization. We don't take the time to look across the country or across jurisdictions to kind of see what's working, how can we make it better. There's been lots of great news about what happened in Nova Scotia. I had the good fortune of having Mrs. McCain walk into my office shortly after I became Premier. And the Minister of Education is from Colchester County, which happens to be where Mrs. McCain was born and raised. Between the two of them, I didn't have much of a choice that we were going to move forward. But there were a couple of stats inside of what happened in Nova Scotia, and I think it's important that you know these, but I think it's important that we remind elected officials, and I'm not at all levels of government, you're drinking from a fire hose all the time. That's not an excuse, it's just a reality. So you need to be able to acknowledge what's happening. And we in Nova Scotia were identifying, we were seeing such a gap between our children as they were entering into primary. I learned a new word, kindergarten today, I guess now is now the same thing, but primary. We were seeing such a gap between the top of those kids and the bottom of those kids. Another stat that you might have been acknowledged here in Nova Scotia, 1 in 4 of our kids are living in poverty. And this is a socioeconomic issue for me. This is about poor kids being left behind. My children were going to get access to an evidence-based, play-based program because I could afford to put them in it. But what about that child whose parents can't afford to put them in it? In 1960, we had communities that surrounded those families and children. We don't have that today. Our families are spread out all across this nation and the world. It's our collective responsibility to ensure that every 4-year-old, regardless of the economic circumstances they were born into, gets to have the opportunity to live a full, productive, and achieve what they are meant to achieve. And it matters just as much to me that my neighbor's children have that opportunity as it does for my own. That is an important change for our future collectively. Why I'm excited to join and be part of this. First of all, I thought Margaret was going to be working with me, not Scott. Because I think I do bring two distinct positions in this. One is I've sat in a Premier's office. So when they tell me why I can't do it, I think I can help you find a way to do it. It's easy to say no. It's easy to say no. Our economy can't afford, quite frankly, to leave these kids behind. But that should not be the reason why we do it. The reason we do it is because we should be caring for every child that has the luxury and opportunity to live in this country, and give each and every one of them the same opportunity to thrive and grow and achieve. And I also believe, with Scott, that we can step into corporate Canada and say, we're not looking for your money, we're looking for your voice. We need you to remind elected officials this is critical. This is critical for the success of our employees, and this is critical for the success of our country and for the economic future of our country. And your voice will matter. Put it on your agenda. Scott mentioned a number of opportunities when you can do that. I believe we can achieve this in Atlantic Canada. And unlike Scott, I'm a proud Atlantic Canadian, but I also believe, if you look historically, when Atlantic Canada gets its shit together, it can spread it all the way across the country. And we're looking forward to doing that together. Depending on which room requires the more kicking, depending on who goes in first. But I'm looking forward to this. I'm proud of the record our government had. Not everyone in Nova Scotia is proud of some of the things we did, and if you Google it, you can find out why. But this is one of the ones that I think that I will hold on to for a very, very long time. Because to be honest with you, our government never saw the benefit of it. The benefit of this program will be for future governments. But I'll get to watch my soon-to-be-born grandchild, 2 weeks, or maybe sooner, enter into a 4-year-old program. I'm watching nieces and nephews enter into that program, and I'm seeing them thrive. And I'll be able to sit back and smile and say, in some small way, we were part of that, and we listened to Margie McCain to make sure it happened properly. Continue to do what you're doing. I look forward to working with Scott, and I believe you're on the cusp. I know change is hardest in the middle. It really is. That's no matter what we do, no matter where we are in our lives, change is the hardest in the middle. I think you're beyond the middle. I think there's a feeling within inside of this country and within inside communities that 4-year-olds belong in our public education system. And the momentum is building and is built. Don't give up. Keep pushing. And we'll do our part from the East Coast to help spread it all across Canada.